Hello and welcome to this week's recorded service. By now you probably should have worked out who I am, but if anyone doesn't or you're new to these recordings, then my name is Steve Mann and I'm the Methodist minister covering the south of the Ipswich circuit from Ipswich down to the Essex border. And whoever you are watching this, you're very, very welcome. Today we're looking at two of the lectionary passages set for today. The principal one, the Gospel reading from John chapter 10, where Jesus describes himself as the Good Shepherd. And we're looking at that in the light of that most famous of passages, Psalm 23. But as Jesus says, I am the Good Shepherd, it begs the question, why does he say it? What makes a good shepherd? What are the skills and attributes, if you like, needed for good shepherding? Well, we could go back to Psalm 23, of course, and there it talks about a shepherd who provides what the sheep need: food, water, protection in the face of danger. They have it all. They have provision, they have protection, they have promise that will go on through all of their days. But we could also look to a more contemporary source, and you might be surprised to learn that there are shepherding websites out there. And I've taken this list of attributes from the website of somebody who gives guidance and mentoring to shepherds, and if that interests you, then I will leave the link in the transcript of this sermon. But she lists 7 attributes. First of all, must be tough at heart. It says shepherding is not just about sweet lambs and bucolic pastures with sheep grazing in them. It's about the survival of the fittest. It's about making life and death decisions that will tear your heart apart. Number 2, must be willing to do hard work. Number 3, must be willing to be humbled daily. Number 4, must not be afraid to learn new things. Number 5, must have great endurance. Number 6, must exhibit ability to observe. And number 7, must have the patience of a saint. And if that sounds like you, then you can apply tomorrow if you want. But nowhere in that list, nor in Psalm 23, does it suggest that dying is in any way recommended shepherding practice. In fact, if you recall the first point on that list, which I read in its expanded form, talked about being tough, having to be tough, having to make life and death decisions that would tear your hair apart, tear your life apart if you cared for your sheep. Any cost-benefit analysis would say that it's far better for the shepherd to remain alive, even if that means losing a few of the sheep. It makes absolutely no sense from the shepherding perspective for a lone shepherd to die protecting his flock. Because what's going to happen then? The flock is just going to be left vulnerable and at the mercy of any predators who happen to be wandering by. Wild animals will still come in and do what they want with them. And the nonsense grows even more when you take into mind what Jesus says about the good shepherd not being like the hired hands. The hired hands all run away at the first sign of danger. But Jesus says the good shepherd is not like them. He's not a hired hand. And that means that the shepherd is the owner of the sheep, or at least as most businesses in those days were family concerns, he's part of the family that own this flock of sheep, and he's shepherding on their behalf. So now think what it means for him to die looking after his sheep. Not only are the sheep probably going to get eaten anyway by wild animals, but he leaves a family behind at home who are grieving for him. It makes absolutely no sense at all, and it's little wonder that it says afterwards, I don't think we quite got as far as that in the reading, but it says afterwards that the people questioned Jesus' sanity at the things he was saying. Now, we're not going to question Jesus' sanity yet today, but assuming that he was perfectly sane and knew exactly what he was saying, what is he trying to convey to us? Firstly, but I believe it's another one of those occasions when he is signalling to those who have ears to hear that he is the Messiah sent from God. And to see that, we need to go back into the book of Zechariah. And Zechariah is one of those books towards the end of the Old Testament that has quite a bit to say about God's coming Messiah. When Jesus rode into Jerusalem on the donkey on Palm Sunday, it's an enactment of prophecy about the Messiah in Zechariah. But to understand, or to begin to understand what Jesus is saying when he talks about the Good Shepherd, we need to turn to Zechariah 11. Because there it talks about God sending a bad shepherd. Now, why would he do that? Well, he's run out of patience with Israel, and what he's saying is that I will send you someone, or I will allow someone to emerge who doesn't care for you whatsoever. They're like a bad shepherd who has no concern whatsoever for the well-being of his flock. So let me just read from Zechariah chapter 11. I'm going to raise up a shepherd over the land who will not care for the lost, or seek the young, or heal the injured, or feed the healthy, but will eat the meat of the choice sheep, tearing off their hooves. That's the picture that you have there of the bad shepherd. And now Jesus is saying he is the good shepherd. And if you look at the way he describes himself, it's almost the complete opposite of the description of the bad shepherd in Zechariah. He is the one who knows his sheep and his sheep know him. He is the one to whose voice his sheep respond in loving trust. He is the one who has that caring relationship with the flock that, yes, will even lead to him giving up his life for them. That's a little bit of over-egging the pudding, if you like. But Jesus is saying this is a picture of complete goodness in the shepherd, in contrast with the one that God has said he will send in the time of Zechariah. This is God sending the complete opposite. Sending someone not to condemn the world, as we see earlier in John, when it says that God so loved the world that he sent his only Son, not to condemn the world, but to save it. Jesus is the good shepherd, the Messiah sent from God. And of course, that's an illustration that makes far more sense for us than it would for those people listening in the time of Jesus, because we live on the other side of his death and resurrection. We can see that he really did give up everything for us. Not to preserve our life in this world while we're alive, but to preserve our life for all eternity, our eternal life. Jesus really did die for us, for the flock. And it's said, and I think with good reason, that when it says that Jesus died for the sins of the whole world, how many people might he have died for? You know, I don't know how many people will ever have lived but before Jesus comes again, but let's say it's 100 billion, let's pluck a figure out of the sky. Would he have died for 50 billion? Yes. Would he have died for 10 billion? Yes. Would he have died for 1 billion? Yes. Would he have died for 1 million? And it's been said, as I say, with good reason, that you can take that down to if you or I were the only people alive on earth, he would still have given up his life. He would still have died for either you or me. That's the measure of his love as the good shepherd. But there's one other dimension that we need to look at, and that's in that as Jesus describes himself as the Good Shepherd, the word for good in Greek is the word kalos. And it can mean good in the sense that we use it, but it was also used to, if you like, depict something that was a noble, an idyllic example, a supreme example of something that was meant to be inspiring and uplifting for the world to see. And so when Jesus talks about himself being the Good Shepherd, we can also see it as a supreme example of love and selflessness. And in that sense, it's not intended to be an example of good practical shepherding. Clearly it isn't, and that's what gets our attention, got the Jewish audience's attention to start with. It makes no sense really in a shepherding context. It's pushing the parameters way too far. But as a supreme example to look up to and try and emulate of selfless love, then it serves as something for the world to see through all of history. And we know that that's what Jesus intends us to see by it, and certainly by his death, because he specifically says so. He says, "My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." That's the command that he gives to us. But don't worry if that seems like an impossible bar, or an impossibly high bar for you, because it is that kalos kind of example, that noble, beautiful, uplifting, supreme example that might be something to strive for, but something that we know we're going to be more like the hired hands, trying to do it as best we can, but we'll all have our pressure points that lead to us running away. But we can still look to the supreme example that Jesus sets and to strive for that, even though we know that no one else can love as completely as Jesus did. So what are the takeaways for today? Firstly, have no doubt that Jesus is your good shepherd. Listen for his voice, the voice of the shepherd calling his sheep to him, calling his sheep out to green pasture. Listen to where he is leading and guiding you. That might take a bit of tuning in. There might be things in your life, distractions that you just need to still in order to hear him more perfectly. But listen and trust and obey. Secondly, give thanks. Give thanks always that Jesus was prepared to give up his life for you, and everything that means. We can never, ever know the depths of Jesus' love for us, and I just pray that each day you may know the depth of that love more and more and more. And thirdly, look to Jesus as an example. Let his example of sacrificial love be an inspiration to you. How can you in your life live more selflessly in your attitudes and behaviour? Not to be a doormat. Sometimes we can confuse selflessness with being a doormat and letting people walk all over us. But to take that footprint analogy, it's not that other people's footprints may appear all over us, but that we may follow in Jesus' footprints and let his life and death be an example to us. My blessing upon you until I see you again.